This week on Bullshit the podcast, we break down the conversation we just had with Vikram Rajagopalan with regard to 2.0 capital partners and the role of alternatives in your portfolio. Stick around, we'll talk about it. The conversation we had a few days ago with regard to the role of alternatives is one that needs to be had more often in the Canadian financial services industry. Right now, the industry is still a bit set in its ways, and it thinks about risk and return in terms of stocks, bonds, and cash instead of low, medium, and high. And as a result of that, the industry has been slow to adopt the use of alternative investments as portfolio diversifiers and perhaps even as staples as a major part of a portfolio. I don't want to go around to say what an actual allocation toward alternatives ought to be in particular, but I will say that in general, most people are underallocated toward alternatives because they do offer, as long as you do your due diligence, better risk-adjusted returns when added to a standard portfolio of traditional stocks and bonds. The thing that I talked about with Vikram was a lot of people don't seem to recognize that expected returns for stocks these days are around 7%, and bonds that are around maybe 3%, and that's before costs. So you have product cost and advice costs coming in. It's not uncommon to see a diversified portfolio, a traditional 60-40 portfolio, come in with an expected long-term return of under 5%. And that's a real threat to the financial services industry because we can get almost that higher return just by parking your money into treasury bills or into GICs and taking no market risk and paying no advisory fee and just taking away all the risk. When adding alternatives, you can do a really good job of improving your risk-adjusted return, which is to say alternatives come in different shapes and sizes. It's not uncommon for them to get anywhere between mid-single digits to very high single digits in expected rates of return, oftentimes as high as or even higher, especially on an after-cost basis, than stocks. But what you have to realize is with the use of alternatives, you oftentimes have to sacrifice liquidity. So what you're getting is oftentimes a return that is as high and maybe even very marginally higher than stocks. You're getting less volatility than stocks, but you can't get out of it quickly the way you can with stocks. With stocks, you can sell them today and have your money tomorrow. With alternatives, if you put the trade ticket in July, you might not get your money out until the 1st of September or what have you, something like that. That might be an example. It might not be until the 30th of September. So oftentimes you put your trade ticket in and you don't get your money until the end of the following month, or in many instances, the month after that. So liquidity is a concern. If you're a long-term investor, however, and that includes people who are retired and in their late 60s and into their 70s, if you have a whole life ahead of you, and a lot of people are expected to live until they're well into their 90s, that means a person in their 70s still has a 15 or 20-year time horizon in all likelihood. And if there's no need for money immediately, that 2-month lack of liquidity should be a very modest consideration, all things being equal. And as a result, one of the things that investors don't often think about is because they've grown accustomed to having their money within 24 hours, well, it used to be 48 hours, but now as of the past month, it's within 24 hours, you can get your money out. That's a convenience that people like and they expect. But most people, if you're doing your planning, do not have that kind of a need for that kind of immediate money right away. And as a result, I would argue that many people would be very well served to have more exposure to alternative assets. If you think of what Hoop and Teachers Pension Plans and Canada Pension Plan and all the major endowments and high net worth family offices of the world use, they have a significantly higher exposure to alternative assets than most retail investors do. And that's because they know that alternative assets offer superior risk adjusted returns. All you have to do in order to be comfortable is to recognize that there's a reason for these higher exposures to risk adjusted returns alternative assets and to not worry unduly about having to wait a month or two, or at the very most 3, to get your money out. We'll talk to you next week.
John DeGooey is a portfolio manager with Design Securities in Toronto. He is the author of both Bullshift, How Optimism Bias Threatens Your Finances, and Stand Up to the Financial Services Industry, Protecting Yourself from Well-Intended but Oblivious Advisors. The books are available online and in bookstores everywhere. The opinions expressed on Bullshift and Shift Happens should not be construed as investment advice. You can reach John at jdegooey@designsecurities.ca or at 647-STAND-UP. That's 647-782-6387.